Hello everyone, this is Randall Root, and in this video we are going to talk about some typical documentation you might create while you're going through the planning phase of creating a database. So there have been lots of different document templates I've seen over the years. One that keeps coming up and I've found quite useful is a version of the one I'm going to show you right now. So the document would start off with information about what the project is, who you are, and what date you're working on this. Here we have some kind of summary, a list of expectations, and then a document history section which would outline what the document has gone through, such as when it was first created, when changes had occurred, if there are any issues that were currently open and blocking the document from being completed, and when they close, I would note those as well. I always encourage people to create some kind of naming convention. In this case, I'm just working on an OLTP database, so I would create the naming conventions specifically for that. Let me zoom in a bit. And come up with some basic naming conventions that you want to use. If I was working on another type of project like a OLAP, data warehouse database, the naming conventions might change. Or if I was working on a more complete solution, including ETL processing and other things, I would also have a section for those items. Now, after I had come up with my conventions, I would then start by documenting things like the table objects. Here's an example of a products table, in which case I have simply an ID, a name, a standard price, and a category that I'm going to link back to. I would indicate a data type, maybe give an example of what the data would be when it came in, and various notes such as the product ID is going to be my product primary key, and it's going to use the identity option. I want my product names to be unique. I want my prices to be greater than 0, and I want the category ID to represent a foreign key back to a categories table. In addition to that, I would note my constraints that I'm planning on using, such as primary key constraints, foreign key constraints, not null constraints, check, unique, and default constraints. I've indicated that product ID is a default constraint, although to tell you the truth, the default is actually handled by the identity clause. Then I'd move on to other tables, such as categories, category ID and category name, very similar documentation, and I just continue on until I have all of my tables. I would then document the various views. I want to always make an abstraction layer above my tables so that I'm not interacting with the tables directly. And along that same lines, I would go through and make not only things for views, but also for store procedures and any functions that I might use. Let's start off with the views. I've just gone through and said I want a V products view. It selects product data, note that. And then indicate the columns I'm going to use, the sources of those columns, and maybe some examples of what the data might look like when it comes back out of the view. I do the same for categories and any other table I have. I might make additional views besides just the ones that abstract the actual tables themselves, such as views for reporting. Here's an example of one that combines data from products and categories. If I had functions, functions aren't something that you see in all database products, but SQL Server certainly has one. I might make a product to do a function that might do something like this, where you give me a category name and I'll give you back the ID, or vice versa. And in those cases, I would document the functions, what's coming into the function as parameters, category names coming in, and what you get back out, the category ID is coming back out. Oh, that says output, but actually a function won't come back as an output, it will actually return as an expression. So let's see, is it a parameter? It's an output, let's see, expression. Now I'll need the database stored procedures. And let me go down a little further. I've got a header for that. I might put my validation stored procedures document at first, just kind of get started. In this case, I'm just validating if something is greater than 0. You pass me in a value, and I'll validate whether it's greater than 0. Now I'm thinking integer is kind of restrictive. Maybe I should make it a float. I'm not sure why that was coming out bold, but it doesn't need to be. And continue on with my other stored procedures, such as might have a reporting stored procedure that selects data. Very similar to the view, except that I might, with a view, I can't not have parameters, but with a stored procedure, I certainly can. And that should be input. You always find mistakes. So I would have input parameters. You give me a product ID, I'll give you back a specific product, or a product name, or maybe a price, or maybe a category. And if you don't give me any of those, I'll just default to everything. So I'll come back with all the data if you don't specify something in the input parameters. The results coming back out would be column data in the form of the result of a select statement. And of course, stored procedures should always have a return value, so I'd have some kind of return. In this case, not much going on. It'll just be a 100 if positive 100 if nothing occurs as an error, and negative 100 if I have a general error. If I'm starting to do insert stored procedures, though, things get a little bit more complex. Certainly I would have input parameters, but I might have an output parameter too that captures the newly inserted identity value. And then the results coming back, I don't really have any select results, but I do have things like a return code that indicates various different status information that might occur, such as positive 100, everything went well, maybe a negative 100 for a general error, or 200 for a product name not being unique, a price being less than 0, or greater than 0, excuse me, or not greater than 0, should make that less. And the name of the stored procedure is greater than 0. And then category ID not found. Any error message I can think of that I might go ahead and document and set up. And then I do have an output parameter that gives me that value of the identity being used, so I might put that in there as well. And continue on with the other stored procedures accordingly. Now, this isn't a perfect document. Certainly, every time I look at it, I see something new I want to fix. But it should give you a pretty good understanding of what a document like this might look like. And for many people, they haven't actually had to deal with documentation like this, and so it's new. And that's what I made this video for. For people who have not had to go through a formal process like this, and just kind of want to get an overview of what that might look like. And I'm hoping that this video helped. Until next time, take care.